So welcome everyone. My name is Shannon Hickey. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the program manager for CMAP, the Southeastern Massachusetts Agricultural Partnership. We are a nonprofit organization that supports farmers and fishers in Southeastern Mass, so primarily Norfolk, Bristol, and Plymouth counties. I'm really excited about this session. This is kind of a continuation of a conversation we started with Myrna back in December. Maybe you all caught that, and if not, I'll actually put the link to the recording of that in the chat right now so you can check it out. But yeah, we are always thrilled to work with Myrna. Yeah, so we are really excited about this conversation about storytelling and branding your farm or food business. Like I said, there's tons of opportunities for questions and comments. And Myrna's always excited to answer those. So I think that's it for me. If anything comes up through the session, I will be doing all the tech support in the background. So just send me a message and we can get it sorted. But I'll hand it to Myrna to get started.
Okay, let me get this up full screen. Am I up there,
Great.
Shannon? Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for coming. This is one of my favorite topics, and there's so much to say about branding that it'll be hard to fit it all in. I think it'll be a good introduction for people who are somewhat newer to branding, and then hopefully there's some more advanced perspective on branding for those of you who have been doing this for a long time. So as Shannon said, there'll be lots of time for you to share your thoughts and reactions as we go through the session. I feel like everyone is an expert on branding because branding is a very personal thing. We're all exposed to brands all day long, and branding is about how you are seen. And so how I perceive something may not be the same as how you will perceive it, as we'll see as we go through the discussion. So let's get going. Who I am, I have a consulting practice called Good Ag Marketing. I've been doing that since 2010. I specialize in marketing and business planning services for farms and food-related businesses. I speak at a lot of conferences and events like this, and I just put out a book called Marketing Your Farm, which I'm hawking over in the photo. And there's going to be a follow-up survey with an opportunity to enter a raffle for a free copy of the book if you sign up for my newsletter. So I hope some of you take advantage of that. So here's what the agenda today is going to be. We'll just briefly talk about what branding is. I'll go through what I consider the basic brand elements, and then I'll talk about something that is a really important tool that really has an effective impact, which is associating emotions with your brand. I'll talk about how do you define your difference so you do stand out in the crowd, and then we'll talk about putting it all together. So what is branding? Some of you may have been in sessions with me before, so you may have gone through this exercise before. That's fine. I just feel like it sums it up in a very succinct way that helps people get it. So essentially, you see this logo here on this coffee cup. I don't think I need to tell you it's the Starbucks logo. So what three words pop into your head when you see this logo? Don't think about it. Just immediately when you think Starbucks, what pops into your head?
You see expensive coffee in the chat.
Okay.
Coffee to go and drive through. Bitter, expensive coffee. Fun, clean, classy. Coffee I do not like. We've got a bunch of Dunkin' people in the room here. Unions. Some dollar signs. Alertness.
Okay, so what do you think when you see this logo?
We see yummy, New England, terrible coffee. Massachusetts, bright, obsessive, donut, cheap. New England's favorite coffee.
It's always interesting when I do this. It's okay. So basically, they both sell coffee. So what would you say is the difference between Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks?
Different customer bases,
Mm-hmm.
different prices. Dunkin' is local. The taste, but price is the big one coming through in the chat here.
Okay. So branding is what I say compels people to cross the street. So essentially, if there are two coffee shops across the street from another, people are going to choose one brand over another. And the brand that they're going to pick is the brand that they feel an emotional connection with. And, we tend to think of all of our decisions as being super rational, that when you're making decisions about what to buy, it's based on really objective things like flavor, taste, uh, um, price, etc. Um, and those things are factors, but I'm hoping to convince you over the course of this workshop that it's that sort of immediate gut reaction that you have, that emotional reaction, is what makes you decide, yeah, actually, the Starbucks is closer, but I'm going to cross the street to Dunkin' because I feel more connected with them. I feel more at home there. It's not that you're saying to yourself, I feel like a Dunkin' person, but when push comes to shove, as we heard from some of these remarks, generally people here are Dunkin' people. Most of you would cross the street if you were closer to the Starbucks. So we're going to talk about how that works uh, as we talk about what is branding. So the thing about branding is it's a blend of your identity and your image, your identity being who you really are, and the objective things like what is the cost, what is the flavor, and the image is how you're perceived. So on one side of the mirror is the identity of the who you are, and then the image is how you're perceived. And your brand is a combination of those things. Yes, the objective pieces do matter, what you offer at your farm or whatever business you have or your organization, that does matter. But equally what matters is how people perceive it. What are their impressions of it? So the thing that's interesting that we saw from the is that brands, especially huge brands, spend millions, even billions of dollars on advertising to get you to feel and think a certain way about them. And they still cannot control what you think of them, how you feel about them, because you're human. You have your own reactions. You may know about union policies. You may know about um, you may have your thoughts about the flavor or the taste, but at at some level, it's always going to be subjective. It's going to be how you personally feel. It can be influenced by things other than advertising, um, like if something's in the news or so on. But the thing is that you can only do so much to control your brand. And we're going to talk about that today. How do you control your brand? How do you try to shape how others perceive you? Uh, but I find it really fascinating that even with all of the investment that these companies make, that you still are not necessarily getting the memo that they want you to get. So the thing is that every single point of connection that your business has with a customer shapes how they perceive your brand. There's you, your brand in the middle, and then I'm about to show you an overwhelming number of things that could affect how people perceive your brand. And I'm not going to go through every single detail. I'll hold the slide for a minute so you can see it. But ta-da, all of these things, it's a ton of things, whether it's the variety and quality of the things that you offer, your fabulous customer service, where and how your products are sold, if you have your logo on clothing, whether they're meeting you in person or talking to you on the phone or connecting with you on social media, all of those things are things that will affect their brand. And it's a living thing. It keeps changing and growing. They may love you after a great experience. They may hate you after a terrible experience. But a lot of us tend to think of the brand as just your logo, and it's really about everything about how you interact with people. And one of the ones I do want to draw your attention to is on the right-hand side, who's in the picture, who's not in the picture. I think for many of us, we're coming from our own perspective, and so when you're picking images that you want to portray your business, the who is part of who is literally in those images and who isn't in those images can really affect whether someone feels like I belong here or I don't belong there. So there's a lot of different factors that are affecting your brand. Like I said, we're not going to go through every detail, but the important takeaway here is it's everything you do about your brand is going to affect how people perceive your business. So this is something that I like to use to kind of summarize how do you build trust and connection through this, through branding. I call them the 3 C's. So the first one is you have to be clear. Ideally, people can either see an image or a short description, and they immediately get a sense of who you are, what you offer, what type of business you are, and they're already kind of on the path to thinking if they have a favorable impression of you or not. Consistency. Now, McDonald's is like the poster child for consistency. I'm sure most of you are not necessarily proud McDonald's fans, but we've all been there. And the thing that's so amazing about the McDonald's experience is that they have all these different franchisors, and they put gazillions of dollars into making sure that it's at least within each country, the experience is as consistent as possible. The menu and that wonderful ambiance, all of the things that we know, that the flavor, the taste, and a lot of people call that the brand promise, that you rely on it. You know, if you're looking for fast food on the road, you know what to expect. So when I talk about consistency and the type of businesses that you are, farms and small food businesses, I'm thinking more about consistency in terms of the look and feel, but it is really as much as because the difference I'm saying is that most of you don't have multiple locations. And one of the things that they're so amazing about with consistency is the multiple locations. But as you'll see in this presentation, consistency is what makes people feel comfortable. So, and the third C is compelling. To many people who are going to be attracted to your farm, seeing a really cuddly, cute animal is going to be super compelling. Not everybody would find that super compelling, but you're trying to appeal to your target or ideal customers. So everyone doesn't have to love you. You want the people who are most likely to be excited about who you are and what you do to feel excited and to feel that invisible tie that makes them want to open up every single one of your social media posts because they know they're going to get that feel-good moment of seeing something so cute. They'll get the awe feeling. Awe. So think 3 C's when you're thinking about branding. So what I'm going to talk about next are some of the basic brand elements, which are ones that, again, we see all day long. And I'm going to try to pull it apart a little bit so you can think about these. I have chosen some of the people on this call to use elements from your websites or social media. I got your permission to share them. And the purpose is not to critique them, it's to illustrate a point that I think is conveyed particularly well. And so I would ask, I don't think any of us should just say positive things. Nobody asked for a critique. But if you have a particular positive impression from one of these things, or it gives you an aha moment, then be sure to feel free to share that. So at its core, you've got your farm name or your business name and your logo. So I'm going to show you a few different logos. We've got, I may be mispronouncing it, Arakura Essences, and you'll see it's a very simple black and white logo, just a typeface. It certainly conveys a feeling though, like if I ask each of you to describe it, the words you might use to describe what type of, we don't know necessarily what type of business it is, but you'd be able to, I have the feeling we'd all share some similar kinds of reaction. Here's another black and white logo with a brand symbol on it. Totally, even though it's also black and white, you know, it conveys a whole other sense to you. So even within black and white, we don't always think of those as colors, but in fact, they are colors that affect us. Here's another business that has a more involved logo, and the combination of elements here really helps us to understand what this business is. They have this fun name, Midnight Hour. From our boats to your table gives us a pretty clear sense, along with the brand symbol we see there. So we're already kind of getting some sense that there's some seafood involved, and it's probably really fresh. And you know, if you like seafood like me, you think, oh, that's probably delicious. And then one more logo, someone not on the call, one of my clients who I think did a really great job with her branding, Fat Moon Farm. So we're going to now take a look at the Fat Moon Farm to go over the anatomy of a logo. So at the core, the image that you just saw, Fat Moon Farm, we see the name of the farm. We see what I would call a descriptor, organic gourmet mushrooms, underneath it. And there you see a symbol with the mushrooms. So you get quite a lot of information from looking at this. And also, hopefully, you're getting some kind of sense of what type of mushroom farm or farm this might be. So one of the main thing that you has to be there in order to have a logo is your name. You do not have to have a brand symbol. Obviously, you need to have a name. And the other thing that's the name has to be in some type of typeface. So in the case of this particular logo, they're using a kind of a funky, fun typeface called Parish. And then for the brand descriptor below it, they're using another typeface called Century Gothic Regular. So you're already getting a sense that a logo has to have a name and a typeface. And then our other element is color palette. And like I said, black and white is a color palette. This logo actually uses 6 different colors, but I just pulled out 3 of them because I didn't want it to look too overwhelming. The numbers you see below them are what are called hex colors. It's very useful if you're doing trying to match up colors in your logo to other items in your brand. There are other ways that graphic designers used and printers used to describe color, but I just included this one there. So you definitely get a sense of what something about the brand from the choice of colors that are there. And then you have what's called the brand symbol, and that is optional. You will see, as we saw, several logos, they didn't have any kind of symbol. You don't have to have a brand symbol. It can be a very useful way to provide information about what your brand is, and also to create some very positive, favorable associations with it. But that, again, is optional. And then the last element I'm going to call out is what I'd call a descriptor or a tagline. A descriptor is pretty much like what it sounds. It gives you, it helps describe what something is. Like from the name Fat Moon Farm itself, you wouldn't really know what kind of farm it is. And by having the descriptor below it, you know not only that they grow mushrooms, but they're not just any mushrooms. They're organic mushrooms, and they're gourmet mushrooms, as opposed to the kind of mushrooms that the conventional ones that we see in most grocery stores. A tagline is something that doesn't have to be as literal. It can be a little bit more fanciful, that it gives you a sense of the feeling behind the brand. And again, you don't have to include that. It's an element that you can include. So these are the symbols the elements that you can include in a logo. And what I think is a couple of tips. I go into a lot more details in the book about this, but one thing to keep in mind is that this day with social media, you may need to shrink your logo down to basically fit on the head of a pin. And so you want to think about, when you're deciding on a logo, how will it look when it's really tiny? And so what I encourage you to do is make versions of your logo with and without your tagline in it. And that one of the things that's nice about a brand symbol is you can use that to stand for your logo. You don't even necessarily have to include the text of your name when you're putting it as your in your social media profiles, because you'll be giving your name in other places. So that's a detail, but you know, it's just useful to think about all of the different things that you can say to your target customers through your logo. So why don't we get just a few quick comments, if anyone has any quick thoughts about what comes to mind when you see this logo?
In the chat, we see professional, fun, recognizable, humorous, homey, local, natural. Earthy.
Well, earthy, did you say? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, so that's really nice associations that I think are very much on target with what the brand is trying to present. So I feel like they've done a really effective job with their logo. Okay, so let's talk briefly about typefaces and use of type. So the logo we see on the left is it's got a very pretty color hue behind it. But what really stands out to me are the fact that it's the white type out of the reversed out of the darker background, and they really seem to have fun with the name. That enormous bug just really makes me smile. And you can see they used uppercase and lowercase. It's just, in my mind, it's very aesthetically pleasing. I think they really, you don't know what kind of farm it is, but it looks like a farm that you might enjoy visiting or learning more about. And so it's not just the typeface, but the way that the words are placed that are helping to set the tone for the brand. So, it can be very, very simple on the surface, but really convey quite a bit. So I'm going to show you one more, which is this is the logo for the Zydeco Meadery in Kansas, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more later. But you get a totally different feel from this one because of the medieval style lettering. And what an interesting combination of Zydeco and Meadery in the same name. And then you see the symbol there. So, you really it's very, to me, it's super intriguing. I really want to know, what is this about? It really, even though I do find it a little hard to read, I had to study it a little bit. I thought it was really fun. So there's so much you can do with typefaces to convey a personality, a sense of what matters to you. And we're going to talk a lot more about some of those elements. So the next thing I want to talk about is tone of voice. And I don't know about you, but that watch your tone of voice, young lady. I've heard that many a time, not recently because I'm not young anymore. But basically, no one wants to be lectured. It's not what you say; it's how you say it. And a tone of voice is conveyed. It's not just words, but your images and actions too. So your tone of voice is also a really key part of your brand. And we got a little bit of a feel for that when I asked you to give your impressions of the Fat Moon Farm. We got a sense of their tone of voice. And we got that with the giant bug farm, the sense of their tone of voice. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you can use your tone of voice as one of your key brand elements. So in this case, I picked this photo because I felt like these people looked like they had some attitude that they were throwing at us. And so depending on your brand, this might be exactly the right tone of voice for you, but it wouldn't be the right tone of voice for the mushroom farm. Essentially, everything that you say or do should use the tone of voice that matches your brand. So again, it's not just what you say, but how you say it or how you convey it. So that means, do you want to use a professional versus a casual tone of voice? Are cuss words allowed? Are exclamation points okay? I happen to be one of those people who cringes when I see triple exclamation points, but if that's part of your brand, that is fine. And then how many emojis? Are you going to be sparing with them, or is more the merrier? It's totally, there's no right or wrong answer. It's what's right for what you're trying to convey. And what's important about this stuff is that if it's not just you that is doing social media for your brand, or creating posts, or designing signage, or any element that's providing customer service, it's very important that everyone involved with your farmer business understands the appropriate tone of voice that you want to convey, so that you have that consistency that I was talking about. You don't confuse, when people are confused, they find it hard to trust you. So tone of voice is really key. And I'm going to show you a few more ways that tone of voice can be expressed. So I just Lonnie Orchards. I think there's an attitude there. You could read their logo, this tagline: "You want fresh, you want local." In a couple, it has multiple meanings in my mind, but I pulled this piece out from the About Us on their website because I feel like the tone of voice in this, I feel like I could read it with a thick Italian accent. I'm not going to do that to you, but it reads like that. It just makes them sound like really passionate, fun people. Who are we? Well, 60 years ago, a gentleman named Pasquale from Avellino, Italy, decided to come to America with his two sons, so on and so on. Their dream was to purchase a farm orchards. Well, that day finally came, and Lonnie Orchards Inc. was born. there's just so much that's conveyed there that makes you feel like these are people. Well, you go there, you're like family. I feel like a lot of wonderful things are conveyed in the tone of voice there, as well as their story, which we're going to talk about in a minute as well. Here's another way to express tone of voice. The brilliant dahlia flowers. They've got obviously gorgeous, elegant flowers, but the choice of images and emojis that you use can also set your tone of voice. So the owner, Sharon Hoskins, decided to add a little bit sense of humor to her St. Patrick's Day post with this sign off. It's kind of hard to see in the post that I copied, but she just said she added the O in front of her name just until St. Patty's Day, and I just thought that was really fun and a nice balance with the sort of elegant feel that, it just makes you feel like we're all Irish on St. Patrick's Day. And I just thought that was a nice little way to incorporate it. So that's a way that you can add elements to your tone of voice that are still consistent with what you want to convey. In this case, little things like signage can reflect your tone of voice. This is from Red Fire
Pastor,
Farm in
eu não achei
Granby.
ainda.
And
Põe
and
lá.
I just love the way that they're this beautiful signage. First of all, see how that yellow pops. I mean, that yellow is very yellow is such a warm color and so cheerful. And so that it's elegant because of the lettering, but it's also very friendly and it doesn't nag. And anyone who runs an agritourism operation has to really be super careful about crowd control and providing directions so people don't get lost. And I have been to quite a few agritourism farms where I felt like they really were heavy on the nagging. And, I didn't like their tone of voice. So even finding a way to convey your brand, say something important that needs to get said, but say it in a way that makes people feel welcome. So that's another way that tone of voice is important. A variation on tone of voice is what I'm going to call brand personality. Brands have personality just like people. Tone of voice is one aspect of your brand personality. There are other elements. So say, for example, you see this image and you decide to use it on your website because you feel like it expresses your brand personality. So the thing about brand personality is that you would use you think of them as a human, and so essentially type into the chat what human characteristics would you use to describe the group in this photo.
Friendly, playful, happy, comfortable. Fun and young, possibly couples, one says. Energetic.
So the question is, are those the words that you would love to have people say about your farm? If so, you want to think about how do you include elements in your brand and your customer service in what you'd say and do that reflect that. But that may not be right for you. You really want to think about, what brand personality you want your farm or business to emanate. Do you want to come across as inclusive, we're all welcome, or exclusive? And exclusive can sound snobby, but in some cases it might be that it's you have to reach. If you're a professional association or club, maybe you have to reach a certain level of skill or expertise in order to join. So exclusive isn't necessarily a snobby thing. In some cases, it can be something that where people feel proud to belong. Do you want to come across as family friendly, or maybe you really want to attract young singles because you're a young single yourself, or you just feel like you want to convey that sense that you can come alone and you'll be welcome here, whatever way you want to convey it. or you're a wedding destination site, and so even though people are single now, you want them to think about your site, your farm, is a great place for their wedding. Playful versus classy. These things are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but we saw that image before. We saw they were very playful, classy. Some of those logos we saw, I thought were kind of classy. And then traditional. Are you someone that is you're using the family recipe for salsa that has been carried down from one generation to the next? And so you're proud of your traditions. It's something that you really, your fifth generation family farm, whatever it is that you're hearkening back to a time when things were less complicated, pre-social media, pre-industrialized food system, etc. There are many positive things that can be associated with traditional. It could also be associated with old-fashioned or stodgy. And at the other extreme, you've got edgy, something that's kind of really avant-garde or showing something really different, really new and modern. And so, only you can decide what you want your brand personality to convey. But the idea is that you want to be intentional about it. And then you want to see, is it having the right effect? Are people reading us the way we want to be read? So essentially everything at your disposal, your words, colors, images, tone of voice, as well as all those other things like customer service, your offerings should reflect a clear and consistent personality that's likely to appeal to your ideal customers. So I wanted to show you just one more slide in this area. One of the people on our call, Truffles by Tara, I felt like her website and social media does a nice job at conveying a sense of brand personality. So everything from the logo with the color scheme, that incredibly friendly smile, classy looking product. It's kind of hard to read this because it's blown up so much, but talking about tasty gourmet treats, showcasing uniqueness of the Berkshires for anyone and everyone. I mean, that gives you a sense of place. And then that really fun look that makes you think, I want to taste that truffle. So I think there's a nice combination of elements here that I think does a nice job. So let's just pause for a moment and just think about, I'm going to give you a minute and ask you to think about what 3 words you would ideally like your customers to say about your brand's personality. Okay, we're about 30 seconds in, so just another 30 seconds. If you're ready, you can go ahead and type your 3 words into the chat box. And if anyone's really super excited, you can raise your hand either in Zoom or in your camera, and we can call on you and you can say it out loud. Okay, so 60 seconds are up. So if you haven't done so already, why don't you share the 3 words you want to use to describe your brand's personality?
I see worth the price in the chat. Soothing, relaxing, fun, thoughtful, liberating, community, authentic, exceptional, family friendly. Really good ones here. Welcoming, engaging, fresh, nutritious, accessible, family.
Yeah, those are
professional.
great words because they're so you can really think about images and tone of voice and other ways in your customer service, your signage and so on that you can really reflect those aspects. Any more you want to share, Shannon?
Nostalgic. That's a good one.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next section, which is talking about associating emotions with your brand. This is a little bit more an advanced way to think about branding, and it may or may not resonate with you, but it's one of the ways that the big brands really, why they spend so much money on advertising, because they're really conveying emotions. So essentially, we don't crave a product, we crave the feelings that they arouse. So, I don't know what these people just look crazy, stupid, happy about their iPhones. Um, but if you look at it and it subliminally says, if I have an iPhone, I'm going to be in a great relationship and I'm going to be happy and I'm going to have fun all the time. I'll have what they're having. Um, the People make a strong emotional connection with their favorite brands. And it seems ridiculous, but people we know, you may be one of them, people who are just crazy about their cars. Some of the brands really center, the Saturn people really focus on building that. Subaru people, you know, uh, BMW owners, they do an incredible job at creating that strong brand connection. So, when it comes down to is, do your customers want to hug your farm? If you're doing things right and you want to be huggable, then that should be the feeling that they get when they're come into contact with your brand. So how do we do this? Well, one of the things you can use is the five senses, and I'm not going to go into incredible detail about all five of them, but personally, I find this collection of images sort of mesmerizing. And there's movement. There's not just sight in it, because you can practically hear the wind blowing through those leaves, and that sense that you want to touch the flowers, and so it's coming up with images that or different ways within your brand experience. Maybe it's through tastings, maybe it's through the smell of the cider donuts, um, letting people pet the animals. There's so many different ways, if you're a farm or food related business, that you can create those positive associations through the senses that people will remember about your farm, and even they won't necessarily even consciously be thinking about it, but it will come back to mind, and they'll want they'll kind of crave to have that positive feeling again. So color palettes are one of the key tools here. Um, when I look at this color palette here, it's just so bright and cheery. It really makes me smile. And there's other associations I have with those colors, but and then I look at this color palette, and in some ways it looks sort of somber, but I also think about earthy. I think about pumpkins. I think about um, the earth and the smell of the soil and digging in the soil. And, there are a lot of really positives about that color palette too, which could be perfectly appropriate for your farm or your business. So what you want to think about is you may already have the colors chosen for your farm, and you just want to think about what do they convey the right connection? Do they have certain convey the emotions that I want to be seen with my brand? Then another tool that you can use is music, and a lot of you may play like a soundtrack if you have a farm store, or you may find other ways to use sound. If you have a corn maze, there may be some music associated with it. I really like this particular case, black leaf tea. in Providence, Rhode Island. It's a Black-owned, woman-owned business that makes wonderful loose teas, and they include a card with a QR code when they send you, when you make an e-commerce order. And if you scan the code, it links to a Tea Party playlist on Spotify that they have programmed to match what they want to convey with their brand. So, we have such great tools these days that even when you're not able to physically play the music, people can still get a sense of what the brand is. Symbols and mascots can warm up your brand, or they can simplify a complex brand image. I used this one in my last presentation for CMAP, but it still applies, which is, can I be your spokescow? If you have a wonderful, if your image speaking for you or symbolizing your farm or your business, it can say things that might sound funny if they came out of your mouth. So it's a wonderful tool to use. Symbols have so much meaning, and we saw it when we were looking at the symbols in people's brand logo, the brand symbols in their logo, that they conveyed a lot of meaning. But it can also be something more abstract. So symbols could be something that you convey, like I often, a lot of brands will, for example, put a blue ribbon on their label. Hellmann's Mayonnaise has this in their logo or in their package. And, it's very subtle, but it just conveys that sense of this is authentic, old school farm product, even though we know that it's not. It just conveys the best. And they used to have that make it Hellmann's, bring out the best, so symbols can have an incredibly powerful role in helping you convey the impressions you want people to have, the associations you want people to have with your brand. Other simple things to do, humor is always very, very effective. And if you can make people smile in your Instagram posts, and when they're picking pumpkins, whenever, like we saw in the signage at Red Fire Farm, anything you can do to add fun, make people smile is always effective. Tell a story. We all respond to stories. We'll talk about that in a minute. Evoke holidays and rituals when it just makes. The tricky thing is that we don't all have the same feeling or memories about holidays and rituals, but if you feel like it's consistent with your brand and your target customers, then it can be a very effective way to build some very positive associations. And then tapping into memories and nostalgia, and one of the people wanted to associate that with their brand. Facebook memories, boy, they got me hooked. I just love it when I see the memories of the past. And I have very mixed feelings about Facebook, but this just makes me think about all the positive things that Facebook has brought to my life. So any of these things can be very powerful tools. So let's take another minute and just think about, well, what kind of emotions would you like your ideal customers to associate with your farm? And maybe even think about what of some of the things I've suggested or things that you are already doing, do you feel like are stimulating those feelings or positive associations? So I'm setting the timer now. You got a minute. Go. Okay, we're about halfway through. If some of you eager beavers want to go ahead and type into the chat anything you want to share, go ahead. Those of you who want to think a little more, you've got another 20 seconds. Okay, so Shannon, you want to share any associations you see?
Yes. So we see confidence, joy, and wonder,
Mm,
stress relief, calmness, beauty. And it looks like Waterway Lavender Farm is already doing that through scented labels. That's fun.
love that.
Um, Wanting people to feel hopeful and excited about visiting us, an open invitation,
Mm,
comfort, possibility, hope, inspiration, memories and nostalgia when they smell our baked goods at the farm store,
yes, definitely.
belonging, peacefulness, warm and fuzzy.
Those are all great. Those are all things that make me think, you know, wow, that they'd be really nice things that either you already have at your farm or that you can build in to your brand. Okay, so we have one more section talking about how do you define your difference? You know, the whole point of this is how do you stand out from the crowd, and it is not easy. I have some suggestions here. Um, so essentially, I would say there are three sort of major ways that you can define how you're different. One of those is your niche, and I'm going to talk about each of these. The second one is your story, and the third is your style. So each of these, you can use one, two, or all three of these to help you define your brand in a way that helps people think about you a little bit differently from another farm that's in some ways seems very similar to yours. So let's talk about the niche. So essentially, a niche is it's the segment or category of the overall market that you occupy. So maybe it's diversified vegetables that you grow using organic methods, or it could be that you're making artisanal cheese, or you could even define it more narrowly if artisanal goat cheese. You know, you can define it any way that you want it, but that's essentially who people are thinking of you and comparing you to is other farms or businesses that occupy that similar niche that you do. So chances are you're pretty similar to other farms in your niche. You know, you're probably not that unique in that you're probably not the only diversified vegetable farm that is using organic methods but isn't certified organic. I know many dozens of them, but there are still ways that you can use your niche to help people feel that connection to your farm. So basically, you can emphasize anything that's special about the variety, the quality, production methods, or availability of your offerings. When I say offerings, it means it could be either a tangible good that you sell, a product, it could be a service, or it could be an experience like agritourism, and availability could be that you may be open 12 months out of the year as opposed to seasonally. That could be a big distinguishing factor. Um, so generally what you want to do is think about promoting the things that you do best, essentially that you're known for, that you're proud of, and that are important to your ideal customers. If your ideal customers are only there during the summer, so they don't care that you're open in the winter all year round, that's not going to make them want to come and visit you. You know, it has to be relevant to the people that are most likely to be excited about what you do and love what you do. So the thing is that the things that you emphasize, they don't have to be unique to your farm. You don't have to do things that only you can say. You don't have to say, we are the best in the entire country, or the best in New England, or the best in Southeastern Mass. you just need to be really good at them, be able to, essentially be able to make the case that it's a credible claim that you're making. And you may want to even provide little details that kind of back it up. But that essentially you're using your niche to essentially define the characteristics that you especially want to be known for, that you think are going to appeal to your target audience. So the second one that you can use as a differentiator is your farm or business story. And there's a few kind of key ways that people tell stories. One is your origin story, and that's basically your about page on your website. Almost everybody is going to go to that page. It's almost always one of the most popular pages on a website. Or it's a section on your Facebook page or wherever, how you got started, who was involved, the challenges you've overcome. That can be very compelling. And yet at the same time, there's an awful lot of multi-generation family farms that have kind of a similar twist to them. I can't tell you how many, I know several granola companies that were started by ex-Wall Street people. It's amazing how it's pretty darn hard to be truly unique. Your purpose and values, that's really about why you do what you do. And that can be extremely compelling to your target customers. And that may really differentiate you from another farm that has very similar offerings. But if your whatever it is, whatever regenerative values, again, you're not the only regenerative farm, but there are lots of different ways that you can convey your values in a way that will attract people. And then third is your personal identity, your background, your history, expertise, how these affect how you do business or how you see the world. And those are things that people can really inspire customer loyalty. So here's one example. Katie Crop Farms just very succinctly shares that it's a woman-owned and family-run farm, trying to create the freshest farm product everyone can enjoy. Says a little bit about where they sell, what they produce. It's just very succinct, but it gives me a sense that connects me and helps me distinguish them between another farm that isn't saying the same things. And then I want to come back to the Zydeco Meadery, which we saw their logo earlier. So they have this tagline, a family-owned Kansas meadery. Now I'm even more intrigued, a Kansas meadery. And then, here's some more elements from their website that you see. Oh, wow, it's this really sweet couple. And they're saying, well, we're actually not from Kansas City. We're from Southern Louisiana. It makes a little bit more sense, the Zydeco there, and we're still not like figuring, they actually say more in there about how they have a family tradition of making mead. So it becomes really exciting to me. And I just love their story, and I want to know more about how how came to be a family tradition, and how their mead compares to other types of mead from other parts of the country, and just getting so much here that I want to know more about. And that's really what you want to do if you're using your story to attract attention and build a relationship and an emotional connection with your customers. And then finally, style. It's amazing. You can have two farms with, sorry about that. I thought I turned my do not disturb on. Two businesses can have really similar offerings, but you appeal to totally different customer bases. Somebody brought that up when we were talking about Dunkin' Donuts versus Starbucks, that people said different customer base. That is so true. There are a lot of Dunkin' people who would not be caught dead in a Starbucks, a lot of Starbucks people who don't go to Dunkin'. and a lot of that has to do with their different style and how they've built up their brand. So let's look at a few aspects of style. Okay, so this is another little experiment. I'm going to show you two different brands these are fast casual eateries that burgers. They sell burgers, and clearly they're kind of trying to appeal to millennials. So here's brand style number one. It's the Good Stuff Eatery. This is like a small chain. They don't have a lot of stores. You can see their logo. It's a little hard to read. They've got this very cute cow as their brand symbol, and then they're using the words goodness and gracious as their tagline or their slogan. And both of those words have a lot of resonance that kind of fit in with the name Good Stuff Eatery. And so you get a real feel for them, that, probably it's high quality. Maybe they only buy grass-fed meat, we don't know, but, it's already telling us a story. Okay, now I'm going to show you brand style number two. So, think about what pops into your head when you see this logo. Does it seem like a place you might want to check out? Okay, I'm going to show you brand two. Okay, so Slutty Vegan. I don't know how many of you have already heard about this brand. The first time I saw it, it was like, whoa, I don't know how I feel about Slutty Vegan, but the more that I thought about it, those are two words you don't really expect to see together. And it really is positioning them as a whole other kind of brand that might appeal to people who aren't necessarily vegan, but they might appeal like the slutty side. And they've got this very fun symbol of the buns of the hamburgers behind, or the burgers behind, which that looks very appetizing. So even if you're not necessarily a vegan, you might be kind of intrigued by it. So think about for a second what pops into your head when you see this logo. I'm going to give you just a few seconds to contemplate the Good Stuff Eatery versus Slutty Vegan. Okay, so which brand style do you prefer? Essentially, would you cross the street to check out either one of these? So why don't you type your thoughts into the chat.
You see wholesome versus edgy, family friendly versus adult.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a vote for crossing the street to go to Good Stuff Eatery and a vote for going to Slutty Vegan because it's more provocative.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to get moving because we just have one last section, and then we're going to open up for questions. So I want to make sure we get that. So essentially, if you're thinking about how do you put it all together, how do you take some of the things that we've talked about today, it's really about how do customers perceive your brand, and does it match what you're trying to do? So remember, I was talking about there's the identity piece that you control, who you really are, all of those different elements, and then there's the image piece about how others perceive you. So what you can do is you can actually ask some of your regular customers what 3 words they'd use to describe you, to see what they think. And if they match up, that's great. But if you feel like, wow, we're really not conveying what we want to convey, or it doesn't seem like there's anything very particularly strong or favorable about how we're coming across, then you could start using the 3 C's, using those 3 things, the niche and the story and the style, to think about how you can define your difference. to help you stand out more. So just a few thoughts. Remember the 3 C's. Think about, are you being clear, consistent, and compelling? And then one tool that I like that a lot of you are already using, this is not an official branding term. I just basically made it up because there's a lot of brand jargon I don't like. Basically, a brand statement is just kind of like the very quick kind of, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is what we offer. And so it basically, it succinctly differentiates your farm by expressing your niche, your story, and your brand style. And here's an example from Newton Community Farm. I feel like you get a real feel from this elements from their homepage. Look how amazingly how their logo matches this image of the farm itself, in the language that they use. Vibrant community, sustainable agriculture, historic Angino farm. You know, you really feel a sense of they're connected to the community and history and tradition, but also trying to keep it up to date with words like vibrant. And I feel like the image in their logo that looks very energetic. I see movement in the image there. And talking about sustainability and environmental practices is very modern, forward thinking. So I feel like they do a good job of creating an effective farm statement here that gives me a feel for what it would be like to visit that farm. Oakdale Farms, Community Barn and Garden Shop. And, you know, it's very friendly here. We learn a lot about them. We learn their 6th generation, where they are, what they offer, what the venues they use. You know, it makes me want to go check them out. I learned quite a bit about them. And, you know, it gives me very succinctly that sense of who they are. So before I close, I want to show you what I think of as a beautiful example. Farmer Days in Tewksbury, Mass. I feel like in terms of like putting things together, I feel like he's done this really well. So I just wanted to show you a few things here. First of all, even just the name Farmer Days, I feel like is a story in itself. I mean, it sounds like kids' stories or something. It just sounds like that must be a really fun place to go. I want to go meet Farmer Dave. So the logo incorporates the farm name and the typeface and this really nice color palette that they're not exactly the primary colors, but they're sort of similar to them. And a story about what they produce that I find really appealing. And then they've got this branded clothing. This picture of Dave, he's got this nice smile on his face. He's a super nice guy, Dave Dumaresque. And so the branded clothing uses the logo there. And then even the CSA boxes are the colors more or less of the color palette, and they've got the logo on them. You know, just reinforces that super consistency. And then their newsletter, you see the logo, you see the typefaces, you see the color palette. It just, you know, again, gives you all those feelings. And then their product signs, they've got the logo on them. And you see the colored bins. And so basically, I just want to give this farm a hug. You know, I just feel like it looks like it'd be a very friendly place to go. So that I feel like is when someone is really knows what they want to convey and uses the tools effectively to convey that. So I thank you so much for participating. Feel free to contact me if you want to do a free consult. I also have, in addition to my main website, I have a website for my book, Marketing Your Farm. And if you want to get more dirt, I have an email list, which if you sign up for the book raffle, you'll be on. So anyway, we've got a little time. So I want to open this up to any questions or comments or anything you want to talk about.
Thank you so much, Myrna. Yeah, as we open up for questions, I wanted to mention, Myrna kind of just hinted at it, but she's going to graciously do a book drawing for folks who sign up for her email list, as well as complete a really brief survey that we have about your experience with this workshop that will help us improve it for next time. So I just put both links for the newsletter sign up and for the survey in the chat. So just go ahead and complete those by the end of this week. And I'll also send them in a follow-up email later tonight, along with the recording of this session. I also wanted to mention, Myrna mentioned free 20-minute consultations with her for continuing to work one-on-one. If you are a farm in southeastern Massachusetts, CMAP can probably fund a few hours of consultation with Myrna, or other types of consultants. So if you really have in your mind done all the thinking about what you want your brand to be like, and now you just need a graphic designer to put something together for you, that's a consultation we can fund too. So if you are a farmer in southeastern Mass and want to kind of continue this work on a more one-on-one basis, get in touch with us. I can put my email in the chat. If you're a food business in southeastern Mass or a farmer outside of southeastern Mass, also get in touch, because we probably have partners that we can set you up with. So I think those are my points that I wanted to make. I'll be quiet now and open it up for questions if people want to put their questions in the chat, or just we have a small enough group here that go ahead and come off mute and ask Myrna directly. And I actually have a question. Maybe I can kick it off while people think of theirs. So I'm wondering about anything you recommend for understanding whether customers' interpretation of your brand is what you're trying to put forward, whether you're hitting the mark with how customers are interpreting your brand. I know you mentioned just asking a few customers, but are there other tools you can think of to get a sense of whether you're presenting you're being interpreted in the way you want to present your farm?
Well, definitely in terms of like paying attention to what they say, when they, if they come into your farm stand and they say, oh my God, those cider donuts remind me of when my mom used to make donuts for me, or, you're kind of hitting the mark there. Or they say, oh gosh, I love that music, or, other things that they might say, or even just sometimes you can watch them and see how people are responding. But you can also do a really simple survey. You can just do an email survey to people on your email list and ask them, you can ask open-ended questions, but you can also say, are we more like this or more like that? Give them some suggestions, so it makes it easy for them to fill out. And you can also do what people call focus groups, where you just get a small group together. And what's interesting about that is that over the course of the discussion, people will say a lot more things than they would say if we were just talking to them one-on-one. So that's another way to get some info from folks.
Do you ever find things like Yelp or Google reviews to be helpful with that, or not?
Oh my God, what a great point. I totally forgot about that. That is so good. Thanks for being my client, Shannon. Yeah, no, that's absolutely very key. When I'm doing consultations, when I'm working with farms, help them with their plans, I always read all their reviews and look for the words that they use to describe the experience. And there's lots and lots of cues in reviews. So that's absolutely not just reviews, but also even like things that people will say in comments and social media. It's a wonderful tool that we didn't have years ago. So that's super easy to do. It's a great starting point.
Yeah, Google even, I think, now pulls out top keywords that are used across multiple reviews. So, talk about identifying emotions that people are having when they're visiting their farm. They're already kind of doing that for you, which is nice. But yeah, other times reviews can just be kind of a vacuum for people's unhappy experiences, right? People, I think, more readily give feedback when they didn't have a great time. So sometimes they're not the most useful, but a good place to start for sure.
Yeah, that's
That's
true.
great.
That's true. And
Other questions? Oh, sorry,
just
go ahead.
one other thing that I can say is that when you're trying to influence how people perceive your brand, you could ask someone, a favorite customer, to say, "Oh, I'd love it if you would be willing to do a review and mention what you said about the cider donuts, or mention what you said about it reminds me of my grandma," or whatever, so that it helps kind of reinforce some of the things that you're trying to get people to think or feel about your brand.
That's great. Anybody else have questions?
If you don't have a question, it would be great to get some feedback in terms of like, what out of the things that we talked about today feel like most relevant for your farm or business? What do you think you might want to incorporate in some way?
Veronica, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, something that I'm pulling out is just to like take not very long, maybe necessarily, and like pick a specific color palette, because I don't know what number it is that I use for the green. And so like sometimes when I'm making a brand new template, I'm just like, this looks like it. And so there's extra work involved there that if I just make myself a brand guide, I don't need to do that work.
Yeah, we have one of those for CMAP, and it's always really helpful. There's comments in the chat too about using a mascot more often. I'm curious what that mascot is, if you care to share that. I need to narrow down my message to get to my target audience. It's a good point. And another comment about this having been helpful for website layout and social media. I will say, I want to emphasize in that last section there, Myrna's emphasis on niche, story, and style. Your website should definitely have a story tab. I think we are pretty lucky to be in a state where, we're I think we're third or fourth in the nation consistently for people buying directly from farms. And so there's generally some goodwill towards local food and farmers. And a lot of that comes from them being able to make a connection with your story. And I think sometimes it doesn't come naturally, right? You think that people are more interested in your product and what you're offering and your price points maybe, but a lot of customers are out there wanting to connect with your farm's story and your food business's story. So even if it's just an about the farm section, just giving a little bit of your personal background can always be helpful on a website. There is a question, can you give an idea of what it costs to work with someone to better their branding message?
It depends on whether you're just looking for essentially this brand definition piece, or whether you're looking for a logo design, color palette, etc. Some graphic designers are very good about asking you things like, what do you want people to feel about your brand? And they're expert at picking color and typefaces, and so sometimes you can skip it. But in terms of if you need, I could just say, when I'm working with people on brand consultation, I have a whole worksheet that I give them that asks them a lot of questions. and they fill it out. And then either if some people, when I do branding workshops, I give them the worksheet, and then, hopefully they go home and do it themselves. I find that's often the hardest part for people, to be objective about their brand and be able to nail it in very concise, clear terms. So usually it only takes a few hours. If someone has gone through, if someone hands me that questionnaire and they filled it out very thoughtfully. But usually what happens is I have to interview them and pull it out of them, and I get the story about why they're farming, and I get amazing stories. Like when I was working with the mushroom farm, the farmer Elizabeth shared so many great stories, and we incorporated a fair number of them into her website, as well as she has some talking points when she does speaking engagements now, and she pulls out some of these stories. So it can vary from cost-wise from maybe equivalent of $400 or $500 to a couple of thousand, depending on if they want to be media ready and really need to have more of a full profile.
We have a really great logo that was just shared in the chat, a hat wearing, accordion playing bee. That's really fun. Yes, I agree. You should use that more often. Also, a lot of comments about building trust and connection through the tone of voice, and how that applies to more than just words. Okay, so we're nearing the end of our time together. Definitely, if you have any last minute questions, feel free to share them aloud or put them in the chat. I'm gonna add one more link to the chat. So CMAP is putting together our annual guide to local food and farms. We distribute 10,000 copies of this guide across Southeastern Mass. It is free for farms and food businesses to get listed in it. If you are in Southeastern Massachusetts. So there's just a quick form to get set up to be listed in that guide. If you're outside of Southeastern Mass, just send me an email, which I'll put in the chat right now, and I can connect you with CMAP's counterpart in your area, who also puts out these local food guides to consumers. I'm going to put the survey and e-newsletter link in the chat just one more time. Remember that you have to do both of those in order to enter the drawing for a copy of Myrna's book, Marketing Your Farm, which I keep on my desk at all times and use it all the time. So yeah, I'm I've really enjoyed this. I hope that you all have too. We're definitely open to feedback on how this went or topics that you'd like to see in the future. Myrna has a really great breadth of knowledge in terms of topics that we could explore in more depth in the future. And again, there is always the opportunity to work one-on-one with myself, with Myrna, or with other consultants that can help you market and brand your business. So that's all I have to share. Myrna, do you have anything in closing?
No, I think that's it. I love this topic, so I'm glad you were able to join me today, and look forward to talking with some of you in the future.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great night. I will send a follow-up email tonight with some of the links that we shared. And I hope we'll see you at future events soon.